to you. So thank you so much for being in conversation with me today.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we could just do some, we can maybe ourselves. And many of you may have already read our introductions, a little bit about each of us, but perhaps, and you probably know Lindsay more than you know me. I'll just do a couple lines on myself, maybe Lindsay, and then you could,
Mm-hmm.
then I can hand over to you.
Sounds
So
good.
so my name is Audrey Hudson. I work at the Art Gallery of Ontario. I am the Richard and Elizabeth Curry Chief of Education and Programming. I am an artist, educator, and researcher. I am a passionate hip hop head. I am a true believer in the absolute power of education, the absolute power of heart, of our hearts, together to make changes that we want to see happen, so that we are centered in whatever we do. I'm going to stop there. And I'll hand it over to you, Lindsay, please.
Hmm. Hi, hi. Iktipay albisis ni sigasun. Kitadam skat nawao. I greet you all. I'm honored to be here in this virtual space today, to be able to share with you and just be a part of what's happening with hip hop today. And it's so exciting to see conferences like this happening. Even if it's in a virtual space, we're still sharing that knowledge and sharing that sort of the spiritual aspects that come with hip hop. And yeah, I'm just honored to be a part of it. I'm in Treaty 6 territory right now. That's Saskatoon. And I'm here as a hip hop artist, also as a mother. I have kids yelling around outside, so I apologize if if I get distracted and get out of this room. No, I don't talk to them like that. But in this sort of pandemic reality, a lot of times we just do what we can with what we have and we make it work. And I think I like how you say letting it happen organically, because that's, let's freestyle it, because that's the way hip hop's always been, and moving forward with that. So hi, thanks for having me.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'd start with a little quote by Janelle Monáe. Let me just pull it up here. So, quote, I believe it's time that women truly own their superpowers and use their beauty and strength to change the world around them. Beauty is about enhancing what you have. Let yourself shine through. So this is Janelle Monáe, artist, futurist, very much a superpower in and of themselves. And so I think, I always when I was asked to choose a song that represented my own journey through hip hop, with hip hop, I chose Lauryn Hill's "Doo Wop," and often people are a little bit surprised by that choice. I think why I chose it is because that was the first time when I saw that. I remember exactly where I was, exactly the time that I
Wow.
saw Lauren come onto the screen, owning her beauty and that superpower in that, like, that onesie short, that yellow shorts. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, hip hop can be that, and that is hip hop. And so that's
Wow.
why that song is so close to my heart, and so close to how I came in to know and love this art form, with all of its contested antagonisms, misogynistic, its offenses that it brings, but that beauty and that truth, like Randall was talking about, that truth that it allows you to tell. Like, you pick up the mic, or you pick up a paintbrush or a can, and it's like
Hmm.
your truth is told, and people listen. They don't have a choice but to listen, and that power that is yielded in hip hop is what I am so drawn to. Um,
Hmm.
so Lindsay, I want to ask you about your song choice. Let's just get into, yeah, let's get into that, your song choice. Do you want to talk about that? It was Princess
Yeah.
from Princess Nokia,
Yeah.
Tomboy.
So
Hmm.
various reasons. I'm a
Hmm.
huge Princess Nokia fan, and that track, when I'd first heard it a few years ago, it it was one of those moments too. It was one of those sort of epiphanies. It's like, um, ever since I've started engaging with hip hop and performing and just being a part of the whole movement. I've always had that obvious reality that comes with being a woman or someone who identifies as a woman in hip hop. So a lot of times in my earlier parts of my career, I kept really quiet about it. And I would really make an effort to just say, no, I can rap and I can put these words together, wordplay, and I want to be respected for that, not because I'm a woman, not because I'm indigenous, blah, 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 right? And then I heard artists like Princess Nokia, and it was almost like a paradigm shift. It's like, I don't know what, through our own, colonial histories, each of us have our own sort of her stories. And when I talk about intersectionality, I talk about how many stories can be different, right? And for me, it was always this idea of being indigenous, being half indigenous, my mom being white, being Russian, being white passing, but living with my indigenous family, my brown family, my brown dad, my brown siblings, and working through that identity, right? And a lot of times there was, I guess, confusion, being young and just trying to find the best way to navigate those areas and circumstances. Anyway, so when I heard Princess Nokia a few years ago, I thought, oh, she is who I wish I could have been when I was her age. Because she's like, who that is? Oh, that girl is a tomboy. And I was always a tomboy, but I didn't admit that I was a tomboy because then I'd be admitting that I was a girl trying to be a guy, right? Like it was all that sort of gender stuff. And but yeah, just her and her blatant unapologetic honesty and also being indigenous as well, and just coming up in this sort of generation where there's so many more indigenous artists in hip hop and in a lot of genres that are just coming up unapologetically. And yeah, so I just felt like, no, I have to drop her name and drop that track and let it sort of represent what I'm about today.
Nice. Thank you. And that confidence that you had, that that is yielded at such a young age. Like I kind of wish I had that, but it's it is so empowering, I think, for so many. So I'm just gonna hold this up. So this is so from what I know about you and about kind of our intersections, it's just a little I do miss writing. I miss taking paper to pen, and so whenever I can, or marker to paper, I try. So you are a mother, a niece, a sister, an auntie, a daughter. You are hip hop. You are Lindsay Eekwol Knight. And so I want to talk about, I have a daughter too. So I want to talk about our babies and how your daughter has inspired, let's talk about how your daughter has inspired your craft, your activism, your education, your lyrics, even your art form.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's coincidental that you should mention her because she was sort of that actual, paradigm shift that happened for me when I actually started changing my music to be more acknowledging my feminine side. And when I had given birth to her, it was like, holy shit, I just had a girl. Oh no. And it was terrifying because my whole life just flashed in front of my eyes. I'm like, okay, it is hard to be a girl in this society right now. And that was the point where I really realized that if I'm going to keep doing this hip hop and keep performing and writing and all of that, it has to be for my kids. And it had already started with my son, who's now 12. But I've been writing for him since he was born too. And so I realized that my whole purpose here is to make sure that this girl or this young human has a sense of pride, a sense of who she is, a sense of awareness about what it means to be a young brown girl in our society, especially here in what is now known as Saskatchewan, where racism is so prevalent, and my little one is obviously Indigenous, and so to help her to embody the power that comes with who she is. So she's lived hip hop with me, just being, ever since she was in the womb. I've been performing with her, and she's 7 now. And I did write a song for her. It's called Iskwe Wak Iskateo Tapwe Win, which means woman, fire within. And that's in our language, our Nehiel language. The term woman is not so much like female, or her, she. It's more that embodiment of the fire, and it's those in the community who keep that fire. And so Tapwe Win is our truth. So I think about those who embody that fire and the truth that comes with that, and that's her, totally. Like, she's just so honest and so confident, and she just keeps me very humble, and I'm sure you can relate to that with having a daughter. Anytime I start feeling deadly about myself, she's like knocks me down.
Completely. Thank you. I, as an educator, I always am, I think about the younger generation, generations to come. And then, becoming a mom, my daughter's 6, was a bit, so very close. So thinking about that changed my perception too on, okay, I am with this young being now. They are going to embody what I give them. And so how can I, give them the best? Of course, I think most parents want to give the best that they can to their young, to their daughters and their sons. I have a son as well. Let's not forget him. He's the second one. He's 2 years old. But but yeah, the girls, it's like, and also, I identify as a woman, and so I know what she may face, and I only hope that together we can make it a little bit easier for our daughters, especially, of course, for our young men as well, but for our daughters to get wherever they need to get, honing in on that beauty, honing in on that power, that intellect. And I think I've been thinking about what she is doing, and I'm starting to think of mapping new constellations. She's mapping new constellations. She's constantly drawing herself into space. She's a young Black girl. It's like, I didn't tell you that not a lot of Black folks go into space. I'm not going to tell you that because you think that you can go there. Go and take it. And then often in the spaceship, her brother is with her. I don't often get to go to the spaceship with her, but her and her brother. So just making sure that she can get to space if that's where she wants to be, like Dr. Mae Jemison, first African-American woman who did go to space. So to continue that. So I want to talk about your project, your all female hip hop project. Could you speak about a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that was really cool. We had gotten to a space. I have a really, really good friend. I call her my sister in rhyme. Her name is T Rhyme.
T Rhyme, yeah.
She's my girl. And we've been performing for quite a while, and we just had one of those days, those days where it just gets exhausting. Ever since I had started rapping, I'd always been up against different forms of misogyny and a lot of challenges, and I hate to say it, but a lot of times it's directly coming from the men in hip hop, and sometimes very obvious and sometimes very subversive. And so it was one of those days of just being like exhausted, and I said, you know what, I wish we could just like do a whole album, like just totally unapologetically, femme, just women, just being our bodies, unapologetically, not trying to sort of fit into those sort of hip hop canon, or those roles that, hip hop, you want it, if you want your music to be popular and heard, it has to kind of sound a certain way, and has to go only this far before it gets, pushed into that sort of like the sidelines, right? Or the
Mm-hmm.
super obscure. But we're like, screw it. Let's just see what we can do and go all the way with this like unapologetically female concept. And so I applied for a Canada Council grant with it, with that in mind, and just like unapologetically wrote the application. I'm like, this is what we're doing, and we don't know if it's going to sell even. We don't even know if anyone's going to listen to it, but we're doing it anyway. And and we, I guess the jury must have liked that, and we got the grant, like the full amount, and we just went for it. And we wrote all of these songs about like what it's like to be a woman in hip hop, in society, what it's like to
Mm-hmm.
be mothers, like the list you
Mm-hmm.
have there, the auntie, the niece,
Mm-hmm.
um, and we called it For Women by Women. And the intro is all about saying, this is not for men. You're not allowed to listen. If you identify as a man, you're not allowed to listen. Shut it off. And all that, kind of tongue in cheek, but it was just like, no, you can't listen. So we've had so many positive comments about that from the men saying like,
Yeah.
yeah, we really,
Yeah.
really felt like we needed to listen because you told us
Mm-hmm.
not to at
Not
this
to.
point. It was really funny. But yeah, so that album just like went crazy with, yeah, we just got shows all over, mostly Turtle Island, and then right up into February, and then it just kind of stopped, for obvious reasons with the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we had so much positive response, a lot of stories, a lot of other young identifying female rappers coming out of the woodwork saying, yeah, I've been doing this, but I'm shy. And it's just amazing because when I was in my 20s rapping, I felt like I was the only one. There was a few out there, but in my territory, in my, my land base right here, I was the only one for a while. And so it's just nice to see that all this generation is coming up. And I feel like that project is sort of meant for this generation to say, you know what, just do it. I know I keep saying unapologetically, but that's just like the word of the year.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's so great. It's so great. And I really do think that, yeah, young women need to hear that.
Mhm.
And that leads me into and you've kind of broached on it, but what advice would you give, or what, words would you offer young women who are trying to find their voice and and coming into their passion, or allowing their gift to shine, um, with all of these contested spaces? So what words would you give? What advice would you offer?
Mhm. Be unapologetic. No.
Yeah.
Mic drop. No.
Yeah,
No.
right.
um, no. What I would say now that I've had many years of this experience, is to really find that community that might just be, aunties and fellow, um, women girls who identify as women that rap. Find that community and lift each other up. You know, there's there's more and more coming out of the woodworks, and the last thing that we want is for competition to create divides, which I had seen a little bit in the past. And but I feel like there's this community that's growing, and the support is there because as long as you're doing this music and or whatever aspect of hip hop you're involved in, it's predominantly male. There's always going to be those louder voices, and if you spend your energy and time trying to convince those louder voices, or be as good as, or be up to par with those louder voices, you're going to find that you're draining energy unnecessarily, because you'll never be a part of that louder voices group. It's more important that you be within your own self, within your own originality, and within that space where you have that support that is not coming from a competitive place. And I know with hip
Mhm.
hop it's difficult because there's a lot of competition, right? Um, but also in sort of our underground scene, our conscious scene, there's a lot of support, and with young girls, just find those peers and work with them, build each other up,
Mm-hmm.
and do that in order to preserve your energy and be able to create that music that is really authentically yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that authenticity, right? Because hip hop sees
Mhm.
right through you. Like if yeah, it sees
Yeah.
right through you. So the more of you that you can bring, yeah, that unapologetic you, like
Mhm.
bring it. Like that's um yeah, I think that's so important. And thinking about you talked about yeah, finding your community or finding others almost like you
Mhm.
who are engaging. Um I want to talk a little bit about this text that it's going. Actually, it's we dropped this text a year and a half ago. I worked with my sister, Dr. Karen Recollet. She's at University of
Yeah.
Toronto, Women and Gender Studies. Yeah, and Dr. Wadi Brahim on this text. It's called "In This Together:
Mhm.
Blackness, Indigeneity, and Hip Hop." But part of what Karen brought to that was that care aspect of being unapologetically, I mean, an artist,
Mhm.
but then giving thanks and showing, really holding a space for the artist like you that we were talking
Mhm.
about through the whole book, which would have gone if it were not for her. She completely shifted that project, and I'm so grateful for that. But
Mhm.
if it were not for her, we would not have done that. But that's of course what we have to do. We have to hold each other up. We have to,
Mhm.
or we should hold. Not have to. We should. We should
Mhm.
think about
Mhm.
that and those supports. Yes, when you're younger, you need that support, but also when we're in our 30s, when we're in our 40s, 50s, it doesn't. That support doesn't waver. We still need that, and so and showing love. Like when Karen and I were like, we're writing these love letters, like in the vein
Right.
of Cyrus Marcus, where the love lettering project that he composed, and it was like we're writing love letters to artists and creators, like because this is what gives us this fuel. This is what energizes us, and so just being thankful and having that real community of care and showing
Mhm.
love to each other is so important as well. So thank you.
Nice.
I want to take a look at. I want to now. Can we go to your scholarship?
Yes.
You're yes, okay, yeah. I know we're jumping, we're going. I'm trying to have a, and I'm just gonna. I am aware of time. We've got about 12 minutes left to talk, and then we'll open it up to questions. But your MA thesis at Saskatchewan in Native Studies, so focused on past and present of Indigenous music, from what I
Mhm.
know, and so I want to talk about the futurity. Let's talk about where it's going. Where is Indigenous hip hop going?
Mhm.
How can we kind of imagine that? How do we imagine more um Indigenous hip hop, or just hip hop by Indigenous artists, or however we want to phrase that, however you want to
Right.
talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's the futurity that you can
Yeah.
see?
Well, just to sort of backtrack for a second here, um, the minute In This Together dropped, I was like, bought it. Because I was like, I was
Ah.
waiting for it because I'm a huge fan, and us us scholars and geeks, like we love that kind of stuff. It's like
Right, I know.
I was like, that was my supper that night.
Oh, nice.
But also Karen is, I consider her like a sister, and
Yeah.
she's also on my PhD committee. I'm doing my PhD right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I wasn't sure, and I was like, "Oh, maybe."
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So talk. Yeah.
mhm,
Talk about your scholarship. Talk about it. Let's hear it.
yeah.
What do you?
So
What's
so
your
I did.
PhD? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is
Yeah,
completely
so
geeking
I'm
out. Yeah.
in
Please.
Nehiyaw territory, and that's my dad is Nehiyaw, and which is Cree in our language.
Mm-hmm.
So our Nehiyaw nation, I sort of wanted to focus more on the continuum of music and sound, and not so much like looking at like traditional contemporary, but sort of taking away from those concepts, because I find those really colonial. And I think the idea of a continuum and how we're constantly sort of um, adapting and changing our music to fit current environments. I don't even like to use the word evolving, because that's a
Mm-hmm.
sense that it's getting better or smarter or greater, which is not always the case. So with hip hop coming into this territory 20 some years ago, I've always acknowledged that it's very new, and that it's borrowed from its origins, which come from the Bronx. I'm not going to tell all of you what where hip hop comes from, because everybody knows. Uh, but I always acknowledge that, because it is not mine to, own, but I do appreciate and acknowledge it as a medium that has always carried me through, as a way to understand Indigenous music. So I use it sort of as a framework, because we have story, we have drum beat, we have all of these ways of creating music in order to get a message across, in order to share news, in order to think about the future, right? So there's similarities in hip hop that I've always found. It's like storytelling realities, but also being able to have that space where we can present to the next generation. And not a lot of genres or cultures, I should say, in our Western environment, not a lot of focus is on that. Let's build for the next generations. But that's what we do. That's what we do. We do that. So it's so innate. It's so embedded in our ways of writing and communicating. So hip hop is just a great place for that. And so what I wanted to do as an artist was, to be able to perform that, to be able to be this voice, to help understand my indigeneity and indigeneity within this prairie settler colonial reality. But I couldn't just do that with hip hop. I had to build and expand a bit. So that's when I started into my academic journey, and started using that within that space. And now I'm doing my PhD, and I'm not 100% sure yet how this PhD is gonna. I'm just reading for my comps right now, so my brain is all over the place with like theory and yeah. So forgive me, but I do know it's going to have something to do with this Nehiyaw land base and the origins of music here, and how hip hop interacts with that, and has interacted with that in the last 20-25 years. How, why, and where it's going to go. And I think, just from what I'm seeing today, with the next generations coming up, that it will continue to grow, and it will continue to adapt into these new ways. And I have, like, my son, who's 12, sorry. He loves hip hop, but not the hip hop that I love. But that's okay, right? I accept, that he is listening to what he's listening to right now, and he's getting what he's getting out of it. And, he's starting to put his own words together, and to, and it's just so beautiful to see, right? Because, yeah, it's, it almost makes me feel a little emotional, because it's, you have children, and there's nothing more that you want for them is to find their place, and to have that sense, like you're talking about with your daughter, to be able to just like just do it, unapologetically. And so whatever kind of hip hop he's listening to, I'm just like, right on, like, this is, and I'm always telling him hip hop history in the car, or maybe I'll like throw in some Tribe Called Quest along with Tribe Called Red, and then talk about the just like kind of sneak in this education here and there. And
yeah.
So I don't know if I answered that question, but yeah, basically that's where my academic journey is going, and it's along with hip hop, and acknowledging that.
Thank you. And I think it's so interesting that your son listens to different hip hop than perhaps you do, and there are in conversation with Dr. Ronaldo Walcott, he was like, Audrey, maybe you have to think about hip hops plural, because hip hop is not just singular anymore. There are so many layers. There are so many different iterations. What someone calls hip hop may not be, like we're a little bit old school. Like we're with the KRS Ones, we're with the Cool Herc. Like it's like, okay, this is what our view of hip hop is, but ooh, that generation is expanding and gathering something different. Like, and that we have to acknowledge that because as a hip hop is so interesting, because it is such It's a new old art form. It's so new. It's like 43. It's 47 years old. So
Wow.
that we actually have the godfathers, right? Like we have the granddaddies of this
That's true.
culture that
Mm,
are alive still for the most part. Whereas,
mm,
you know, and it is I always call it a close cousin of reggae and jazz.
mm.
But they are older. Those are older art forms. But hip hop is that child of those two, those Black musical forms of
Right.
expression.
Yeah.
And so we're so lucky, I think, to have a lot, like have the godfathers to speak about this art form, and actually still
Mhm.
have the forerunners alive to speak with too, and engage in conversation,
Mhm.
and hear how they think about how hip hop
Mhm.
has evolved. If it is indeed that hip hop's. I know that when I was doing
Huh.
my thesis as well, um, I had to think about different ways. I did a study with Black and Indigenous youth, and I saw hip hop as a means of solidarity between the two
Mhm.
groups, and so they were listening to things that I had no idea about. I'm like, what's that? So I was being educated as much as they were,
Mhm.
and just owning, I think, that beauty in that exchange
Right.
and in that newness that we have come to understand as hip hop.
Right. And just like being open to
Yeah.
those ways that it's shifting and changing and yeah, becoming hip hops. That's wow. I love that. Yeah.
I know. I can't
Yeah.
stop. And he hasn't written anything on it. He
Mhm.
just, you know, this was in conversation. He's like, Audrey, like it
Yeah,
was,
he's gotta
you know,
write.
we have to think about this. And that's how perhaps, you know, we can move to understand what the younger generation is listening to, what the younger generation is perhaps enacting,
Yeah,
through,
exactly.
um, yeah, through some of the same tenets, perhaps,
Yeah.
but
Well, I
but
think
different ways.
about yeah, because I think about myself as a 13-year-old on the reserve, just like
Mm, mm,
plugging into Rap City on BT and being like,
yeah.
whoa, like this is not Fresh Prince of Bel Air. This is like talking about the street and talking about, poverty and I
Hmm.
can relate to this. And I've always
Hmm.
like I always go back to that. It's like not sameness, but a lot of relatable stuff. And then the way that hip hop is presented, it's with so much confidence. It's with so much no. This is what I'm saying. You listen to me. Like way back, like Public Enemy. So a lot of like, talking about blackness and what that means and how that reality is unapologetically when you start
Yeah.
like typing it in but as indigenous people it's so relatable and to
Hmm.
see that happening is like it's so inspiring because this is brave, this is really bold and brave, like we can't do this here, like we
Hmm.
wouldn't dare, there's it's we're not at that space yet. That's how I would think when I was young. And the reality of today here in our settler colonial Saskatchewan, my son is still living in that. We still have our young brown kids getting shot for no reason. We still are getting pulled over by the police. We're still living in that reality. And so if he listens to a lot of the younger rappers that are coming out, where sometimes they're glorifying gang life and whatever, the fact that they're talking about their black, like talking about blackness and talking about what it is to be a young black man. And if my son's listening to that and saying, yeah, I get that, I get that, then hopefully the values and, that I've instilled, that we've tried our hardest to instill in him as a
Hmm.
Nehiyaw boy, a
Hmm.
Nehiyaw person, hopefully he can use that and use whatever means of hip hops he finds and be able to, create his own space. So I
Hmm.
have no disrespect or disregard for a lot of these young rappers up and coming. I listen to them. I'm like, yeah,
Hmm.
I understand. I totally understand where you're
Hmm.
coming from. This is reality, and a lot of times it sounds really good and like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
vibe to
It's
this,
like, okay,
right?
there's a beat there. Yeah, at
Yeah.
least.
So I'm not going to be that parent that's going to be like, no, no, you can't listen. Like,
Yeah.
screw that. No, you listen to what you need to in order to have that, like, in order to understand who you
Yeah.
are and how that looks. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And that's, yeah, and exactly what you said. That's why I love hip hop. That's why I come back to it every single time. That's why, you know, I think it's a powerful it is a tool of decolonization. Like, absolutely, it is born out of young Black youth, you know, and taken up by Indigenous youth, taken up by Latina and Latino community. Like, it is, there's no whiteness in this. You know, white folks have taken it up, sure, but it is owned by Black and brown people.
Yeah.
And so that in of itself is an act of decolonizing, and also futuring, you know, Afrofuturists and Indigenous futurities. All of that is why I keep coming back to it, because we know that, you know, your son and so many other sons, brothers, sisters are going to get something out of it. And that's why because those truths are being told unapologetically. And so that's why I respect and honor the craft. Totally. So thank you.
Yeah.
I think we're opening up for questions. I'm just looking at the chat. Yes, Jessica has told me that we are opening up for questions.
Dr. Hudson and Eekwol, I'm Bradley. I'm back again. Sorry for just dropping in you earlier, but I'm here to help you. I'm here to help chat as well too. So what I've asked everyone is just if they have a question, I encourage them to ask you directly so you can see them and hear from them. If they're going to put their hands up, everyone in chat, just put your hand up using the reactions if you can, and I'll do my best just to, you know, recognize you and then allow you to have the floor. I also know some people may not feel comfortable being on camera, and maybe it's just a challenge for them. So as I mentioned in chat, if you have a question that you would like me to pass on to Dr. Hudson and Eekwol, I'll read them out as well too. So we've got both ways to accommodate everyone however they feel most comfortable. So maybe what I'll do first is just start with a written question, and then that will allow maybe the chat to just get prepared and maybe think of their question, raise their hand. But I'll pose it to both. Actually, this one is first to Eekwol. It's from Daphne in chat, and she wrote, I was interested in listening to the song that Eekwol wrote for her daughter later, and was wondering where I may be able to find it. The one where she translated as Woman of Fire Within.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that one, I actually called it, my daughter's name is Kise, and in our language that means, you know, compassionate and kind. So I called it Kise's song. So I'll type it in the Kise's song. Oh, it corrected me. No, it's Kise. Yeah, so if you Google it, or it's on YouTube, there's a video for it. Oh, whoops, I just sent that to Audrey. Let me send it to everyone. Oh, I don't know if oh yeah, everyone, here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so you can check it out on YouTube, and it's also, you know, Spotify, iTunes. Yeah, there we go.
Daphne says, thank you. Awesome.
No problem.
Everyone, I'm just scanning the gallery view right now. I don't see any hands right now, so if you have a question, just feel free to say hello and jump on up.
Eekwol, do you want to talk about while we wait for or if there are any other questions, but I didn't ask you, I know that you're working on your of course you're working on your scholarship and your PhD, and there's little else time likely, but are you writing anything new? Like, do you have any new rhymes that perhaps maybe are going to be integrated into your thesis, or that you want to share? Like, what are you up to right now?
Yeah, no, I've definitely been writing a lot, especially in the last few months. I've really had my own sort of like little shifts with music and just, you know, from a different space. Like I had said, the last performance I did was in February. Yeah. And so I'm really missing the stage and just like having that like live audience. And, you know, with hip hop, it has to be like, you know, you're one with the audience, right? It doesn't work without that. So I've been writing a lot, and I have a show, my first live show coming up on Saturday in a little town called Prince Albert in Saskatchewan here. Oh. And I don't know what, like it's an art center, and they're having this sort of like series of shows that are totally like pandemic social distancing kind of vibe going on. So I'll have my, you know, set up but not near the sound people, you know, it's going to be all sort of set up like that. So it's going to be weird, but I'm excited for it because I have a few new tracks that I want to sort of try out on people, and see how that goes. Yeah, that's sort of what I've been doing with music. And ideally, with my PhD, I would like to really, really think about doing something sonically. Ideally, you know, I'd like to drop an album for my PhD and
Yes.
do it that way, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
yeah, because a lot of us learn sonically and learn through audio, and yeah, I just think that's accessible and really important.
Yeah, and bring your true self, right? Like you're bringing your true self. Like just because you're doing a PhD doesn't mean that you don't bring your true self. Like often it's there's this assumption that, oh, you're going to be a scholar, or oh, you're going to do a graduate degree, you're going to lose yourself. It's like, no, I got myself. I got me.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to bring me.
So, yeah, totally. I mean, you can't separate. You can't
no, and you shouldn't. I don't think, and maybe sometimes we try to, I know that we do, you know, in order to conform to certain ideals, but I think it's the best when we don't, like, just bring it.
Yeah.
So good.
Totally. Yeah.
So good.
Unapologetically.
Yeah.
I see a question.
Yep, I could just say it out loud.
Okay.
So we briefly touched on it a little bit before early in the conversation, but I just had a question because I know Black rappers have a hard time being accepted in hip hop from male rappers, but as an Indigenous woman, could you touch a bit on the experiences you may have faced, maybe even from the Black community in that space?
Yeah, definitely. It's I'm not like, yeah, I can't speak on Black female rappers. As a woman who raps, a lot of it's just been, you know, comments. Back in the day, we had what's known as MySpace. You probably don't know it. Yeah, you know, there was a lot of these platforms that allowed us to have these like chats and meetings and sharing music and that sort of thing. And always a lot of, I would say, comments that were sort of always wanting to sexualize who I am in my music, even though I'd never, you know, tried to be in that space, you know, consciously, but always commenting on that type of thing, and then getting the DMs, you know, all kinds of things like from reputable names, you know, that when I was younger I was much too scared and shy to call out, but just, you know, comments and pictures and that kind of thing, and I would always come back with like, did you send that to your homie too, or just me? You know, like, you want me on this track, did you send that pic to your homies too? You know what I mean? And that type of thing, but also really just those sort of comments like, you're actually a pretty good rapper for a girl, you know, that type of thing. And as a younger girl, I would be like, oh, thanks, you know, right on, I'm getting up there, right? But yeah, as I get older and in retrospect, that was like, you know, it's just where it comes from. It's the patriarchy is there. And I think as an Indigenous woman who raps, there's probably a lot of commonalities when we're coming up into that space. But the biggest one, yeah, is that either you have to be like super over sexualized or super like tomboy, you know, like one of the dudes like super either gangster or just really like solid and like, you know, you can't just be in between, otherwise you'll sort of get pushed over to that you know, that space that they create, you know, for you in a lot of ways. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, first, thank you, very insightful.
Thanks, Kasia. That's
because
awesome.
I think that
oh, sorry.
I think that I think that the Indigenous women experience is unique and we don't really hear about it. So
yeah, and you know, if you look at the history of what is now known as Canada, missing and murdered Indigenous women, and this long history of Indigenous women as being, you know, the most susceptible to violence and those types of stories and realities. That it's definitely a voice that needs to be continuously built up and continuously supported and continuously given space. You know, I'm always telling these younger girls that are rapping and, like, you know, that are shy, it's like, I got you, like, whatever you need to help, you know, to help like create that space and to share that voice, you know. It's just like my life, you know, I guess I call it anteing. It's where you become that age where all you want is these young girls to succeed, and you want them to not have to go through it. You know, you just want to protect them. At the same time, you want to give them that, you know, that space to discover for themselves how much strength and power they have in their skin and in their bodies, and all of that. So yeah, it's I'm hoping that hip hop is changing when it comes to women coming up in, you know, either rap or in all aspects of hip hop. I'm hoping that's changed a bit. And I don't know, Kayla, Kasia, you probably have more of a knowledge of that in your generation. And I'm hoping that some of that is changing, because it needs to.
Thanks, Kasia. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off earlier there. I thought that was, I thought you were finished speaking, but that was my apologies for that. We have some other questions. We have 2 more questions from chat that they've asked for me to read out loud. One is from Michelle, and Michelle asks, I'll read the note. Michelle said, very relevant, excellent point, Kasia. Audrey and Eekwol, can you discuss how there can be a bridge built effectively regarding current generation and perspectives on hip hop to address the gap that Kasia has so effectively raised?
That's a good one. See, I have, you know, a lot of relationships that I've built up over the years with Black women who rap, and, you know, in Toronto and Vancouver and, you know, all over North America, done shows together, you know, built these relationships, and they're so important and essential. But as far as, you know, being out there, I guess sharing that, I think there might be more powerful ways that we could be more effective in sort of presenting that, you know, to a larger audience for opportunity and support, because I do have a really strong support system in the Black and Indigenous communities of women who rap. So just to read that question, it makes me think like, I guess that's just like our little bubble, and maybe we should be sort of doing more collabs or something like that in order to sort of make that a little more visible.
Yeah, and I think can I just add just a tiny bit? You know, I think and Eekwol, you touched on that, or you talked about this, you know, becoming an auntie, if you will, that mentorship aspect is really something. When you were talking about that, I'm like, yeah, me too. So it's I think that's a part of it as well. And, you know, keeping that space, holding that space for these young, brilliant women, and young men too, but was black and brown young men and women that are coming up, and being there, I think has been that's what I've been trying to do, and, you know, even in my own practice at work, like actually having space for that to happen, creating those spaces with the amount of power that I have at this institution. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to use it. I'm going to bring my community with me. It has to always.
Yes.
So I am creating those spaces, trying to create those spaces that I can invite, you know, young people, young folks to come in and do their craft, whatever that craft is. So I think that's another way that we can really work on. And anyone that does have that do hold positions of power. Like, I think that, you know, if we start to work that even more, and just, we have to remember, there is a generation. It's, you know, 7 generations before, 7 generations after, right? Like, that's the teaching. So take it and remember it and enact it, like actively think about that and actively create those spaces. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Eekwol, for chatting with me.
Thank
And all of
you.
you who participated.
So dope.